Live chair.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to viewers to this Community and Environment Committee. We had 120 viewers last time, so I hope you're all still with us. Just a little announcement to make. We've once again been awarded a Green Flag Award for Lace Park by Keep Britain Tidy. So congratulations to Becky and the Green team who do such fantastic work in our parks. Jason, would you like to make the roll call of councillors? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just call out councillors' names, and if you could just indicate that you're present. Councillor Buckler.
Yes, here.
Bull.
Yes, here, thank you.
Burthorpe.
Yes, here.
Bogart.
Here.
Finesse.
Here.
Gamble. Councillor
Here.
Gamble.
Here, sorry.
Councillor Hobson.
Present.
Councillor Morley.
Here.
Councillor O'Brien.
Here.
Councillor Pawley.
Here.
Councillor Purdy.
Here.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Here.
Councillor Statham.
Here.
Councillor Sutton.
Here.
Councillor Wayne.
Here.
And Councillor Wakeman.
Here.
Full house, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Any apologies? No, obviously not. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Would anybody like to propose approval?
Move them, Chair. I'll second it, Chair.
Thanks very much. Can we just have a show of hands on that? Thank you. Is that okay, Jason?
Yeah, that looks unanimous, Chair.
Okay, item 3 is public participation. We have a question from Mr. Peter Dobbs of Ashbourne. Are you going to show that on the screen, Jason?
Not now. Not there.
Yeah, that's there now. I will now give the response to the questions. Thank you for your question, Mr. Dobbs. In reply, I can inform you that a preferred consultant has been identified and contracts are in the process of being agreed. In relation to timescales, the preferred consultant has indicated that their work can be completed in a very short space of time. 2 weeks has been suggested. However, a start date has not yet been set as part of the contractual arrangements. I will ask officers to update you when a more definite timescale is available. Thank you, Jason.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask why we constantly see pertinent questions about the urgent need for an AQMA for Buxton Road, Ashbourne, followed by answers which are either evasive or promising future action that never seems to materialise, and prompt further questions from the same resident at the following meeting? Can we not have a comprehensive report to this committee or to full council so that the true facts of this issue can be revealed during a conventional debate?
Do you want to respond to that, James?
Yeah, I will do. Thank you, Chairman. So you've written to me separately, Councillor Burford, about such an item being brought forward. Liaising with colleagues to make arrangements for that to come to a future meeting for discussion. And I would anticipate that I'll be able to write back to you before the end of the week to confirm what action we'll take.
Thanks, James. Item 4 is interest. I have to declare a personal interest in item 9, as I'm a director of Bradwell Community Land Trust, which is mentioned several times in the report. Any other interests to be declared?
Councillor Bull, I've got an interest, obviously, item 8, Ashbourne Neighbourhood Plan. I actually sit on the Ashbourne Town Council. So, I don't know whether that means I have to leave the room. I'm not so sure. James, if you could advise, please.
I don't believe you need to leave the room for that item, Councillor Bull. Your membership of the Town Council doesn't preclude you from participating in this vote.
Thank you.
Any other interests? No. We'll move on to item 5, which is questions pursuant to Rule of Procedure number 15. We have a question from a member. Are you going to show that on screen, Jason? And I will
have a go. I'll have a go, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble, you did suggest that I should, as you thought there were going to be a lot of dates in the response, you suggested that I emailed you afterwards. That's not actually the case, so I will read out the answer this now. The answer is, over the last few weeks, officers have spoken with colleagues at Peak District National Park Authority and neighbouring authorities on this issue. The discussions have not been held as formal meetings, so dates cannot be given. In addition, a contact has been established at the Fire Authority regarding the campaign material they used, and the intention is to touch base again early in 2021. Preparatory works for the PSPO consultation exercise are underway and will go live later this year. Thank you. Are you happy with that, Councillor Gamble, or have you got a supplementary?
Sorry, my pad collapsed then. So yeah, happy with that. I mean, just the consultation in November, will that include portable barbecues?
Would somebody like to respond to that?
I'll take that, Chair. Yes, we'll be looking at portable barbecues, Councillor Gamble.
All right, brilliant, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the question. Item 6 is the annual leisure report. Becky, would you like to present that to us, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first annual report that's come to committee for the leisure centres, just due to year 1 of the contract being just over 8 months. So year 2 was for the full year. So the report highlights the performance of Freedom Leisure and the 4 sites retrospectively from April 2019 through to March 2020. So this report is highlights for that financial year. The majority of the report links to Appendix 1 within the report, which is the annual report from Freedom Leisure, which highlights a range of successes throughout the year. Some of the key areas is the participation, rising the participation figures, and also the savings on CO2 emissions. Also on the call today, we've got Jeremy Rowe, who's the Regional Director from Freedom Leisure, and also Andy Harris, who is the Area Manager at Freedom Leisure. So I'll just open it up now for any questions from both myself and Freedom to answer. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Becky. Councillor Purdy, sorry, Councillor Froggatt.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to move this report. It's quite clear that the partnership between Freedom Leisure and the District Council is working. So I see no reason not to. So yeah, I'll move this report. Thank you.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to second the report. Obviously, we're looking at the previous year, and we have had excellent stats with the public participation, etc. And of course, now we're in this situation of the pandemic. So I am interested in Jeremy and Andy answering questions from the committee, but I'm happy to second this report.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reference one of the recommendations, which I think is good to note, and that's the green energy. Going back a number of years, and I'm sure older members of council will remember that ex-councillor Jackie Bevan and myself would really push very hard for the proper boilers in the leisure centre, which at that time was a bit resisted by Dave Brooks, but we won the day. And I met with the directors last year at Leisure Centre, and pleased to see the work of partners with our organisation and that constant drive to drive down carbon footprint. Thank you.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Right, thank you, Chair. I hope everyone can hear me, even if they can't see me. You might be pleased to know, incidentally, that I've got a flask of Ovaltine here with me, should this meeting go beyond 10 p.m. In respect of this report, yes, it's generally pleasing. I have to say there are a couple of flaws here, but I don't think it's any particular fault of Freedom Leisure. Can I say that when we get these reports, I would be pleased to have, I know it's perhaps a little taxing for the people that produce this, but some of these items in the report totally fail when they're done in black and white. Anybody looking at page 21 of the Leisure report would have found it just about absolutely indecipherable in this thing. I too would certainly like to congratulate Freedom Leisure for the investment that they're putting into the centres to reduce carbon emissions. It's very much in line with our climate change and strategy from the other evening. And I have to say, of course, we did have this discussion at that time about the impact that our leisure centres have, and it's good to know that something is being done in-house, as it were. I know that this report only goes up to the 30th of March 2020, so it is going to be very interesting on the next occasion of a report, particularly given the fact that we have made 2 quite significant subsidy payments to keep Freedom Leisure going with our management. And of course, no doubt there'll be some impact upon the very good figures that have been mentioned in this report, the increase in service users noted here during that first year of the management. I note too that we don't have anything in the report as such about the active communities manager post COVID, as it were. But I think we can confirm that unfortunately, as a result of the impact upon finance, this post was put on hold. But the report again, I think substantiates the good benefit to be obtained by such a post. I wanted to mention something else, if I may. Oh yes, it's slightly flippant, I know, but I was intrigued on page 19 by the comment that elections returned to Wirksworth after an 8-year gap. I mean, I do know, of course, what it's referring to, but I did think to myself, how on earth did I get returned as a councillor if we weren't having elections? Just to comment in a slightly parochial way about Wirksworth Leisure Centre, I think everybody again is very generally pleased with the management of the centre by Freedom Leisure. We are anxious, of course, that staff levels are maintained and that there's no redundancies, as it were, brought about by the COVID situation. And of course that equipment failures are quickly rectified. But I think more than anything that service users are kept informed, consulted, and we maintain this notion that was started some years ago when I was the Wirksworth Leisure Centre Advisory Committee Chair, that service users have this conduit whereby they can, as a collective group, engage with other groups from the other leisure centres to again engage with Freedom Leisure. So yes, I've nothing untoward to say about the report as such. No doubt some others may have a bit more forensic questions to ask, but I'm very supportive of it, and I note all the good things that have been reported during the first year.
I've got Councillor Martin Burfoot next. Before that, Councillor Hughes has just arrived, so I better check, Councillor Hughes, if you've got any interest to declare. Can you hear me, Councillor Hughes?
Sorry, I was on mute. I have no interest to declare, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Thank you. My iPad's collapsing, I'm afraid. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to ask a couple of questions, actually. Recommendation 2, to note the rise in participation figures for 2019 to 20. A resident and regular user of the centre of the Arc has raised with me only today, actually, that she thinks there's a need to promote the Arc and presumably our other leisure centres rather better. And we do. So she wonders if either the council or together with Freedom Leisure can perhaps advertise the excellent facilities at our leisure centres, and especially the Arc, with a flyer perhaps in one of the free newspapers or in Dales Matters or whatever, so that the general public who don't necessarily use the Arc at the moment know just what is available. That's the first question. Then on page 38, to do with the February 2020 performance requirements review, whatever. There's an issue, and another resident has raised with me about, or did several months ago, about the cleanliness issues at the Arc. And I noticed there was a failure notice in February, the date of this report. So I wanted to know if this was just an isolated incident, and if the issues that were raised then have now all been remedied, and that now the Arc is seen as in perfect condition in terms of cleanliness and hygiene and such like. And what the final penalty would be if there were further problems there. What is the final penalty against Freedom Leisure if the problems persisted?
Becky, do you want to answer those?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So for the first question around the promotion, it has actually, for this next Dales Matters, which I think is due to go out any day, there is a full page spread on the leisure centres, including a free gym voucher, and also competition as well for winning a free membership. So from that side on promotion, I don't know if Andy or Jeremy want to add to the promotion and marketing side of things.
Yeah, if I come in on that one, and Andy perhaps can come in on the cleanliness one next. Yeah, you know, we were always looking at how best to promote, and each sort of contract is an area is different in that. So any intelligence our local users, the council and yourselves can assist on that in terms of where best to send our messages and promote. We'll do everything we can, obviously, to ensure that as many people as possible can see what's available to them and benefit and come and see us, really. So I'm pleased to hear that, obviously, you know, Becky has mentioned the sort of the media there that we're going to use to get those strong messages across, especially at this time where customers need confidence and reassurance to come back into facilities and see how safe they are and how great staff are.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Gamble.
Sorry, but my top of my thinking is going. I know I'm going to sound like a walked record on this, but this is a report to note. I really don't see what this is doing on the agenda. I don't think we actually really need it on here again. I mean, we should be discussing things that actually have a decision to make, but I just want to put that on record. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chad. I don't need to speak on this item, but I would like to raise a point of order before the next item, if that's okay.
Okie doke. Councillor Pawley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask, in 210 of this report, we're talking about key performance indicators and a 17% increase over the target set. Can somebody tell me when you set these targets, and how are you going to deal with the targets setting for next year when we don't really know what's going to be? We know what's happened this year with COVID, but how are we going to work at that one to make sure that we set a decent target that's actually realistic? That's my first question. And could somebody explain to me in 225 what those figures actually mean? I'm not very good with figures, I have to admit, but I just could not make out what that was actually saying. So I'd like a little bit more explanation. Thank you.
Becky?
Thank you, Chair. So the first one around the targets. So the targets were set earlier on in the year, just around how they performed last year, and we set a benchmark figure, and then from that there's an percentage increase on each year on year. So we're sticking with that for now, moving forward. Post COVID, but we'll be addressing those on a regular basis just to find out what the trend is, the national trend as well. So we'll be looking at how sites are performing across the whole country and working with UK Active and other providers who understand the trend of participation throughout the nation.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. First of all,
sorry, Chair, she didn't answer my second question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Councillor Pawley, make your point then.
Thank you. So I'll just mention
I did ask.
Financial. So that on 2.25, I think it was.
Yes.
So what that statement basically means is that according to the bid, so Freedom's income was higher than they actually predicted in the bid over the 12 months, but also the expenditure was higher. So in regards to where they were performing against the bid, they're still in a deficit of 185,738. So it's still in a deficit, but it's ahead of the bid position that they predicted.
So that's the bid in the contract that we set up. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the person who wrote this report on an excellent report and summary of activity over the year. And I do think that it is interesting for councillors to see the range of activities that are undertaken associated with the Freedom Leisure contract, and particularly the outreach into the community. I would, just to comment on the cleanliness issue that may have arisen at the Arcs Leisure Centre. My daughter, who was living in Hereford and has recently moved to Derby, has commented very positively about how clean the Arc is as a swimming pool and how much she enjoys swimming there. So I think possibly it was a one-off. She's commented twice, most recently in the last 3 weeks. Then moving on, I noticed that there are proposals for. Well, sorry, there's been expenditure on boilers, and there may be further expenditure on boilers. And I would just like to ask how this will be related to our climate change strategy, which is to be zero carbon by 2030. Now, I don't want to go into that detail of that or either of these points, but perhaps just note that perhaps the leisure centres need to be moving in that direction. My third point is then about the outreach programme, and particularly Hurst Farm, which is in my constituency, my ward. And I note that a free swimming session was offered last year and was taken up. I'd be grateful if that could continue this year, or if it could be confirmed that there will be similar sorts of free swimming sessions with free lessons this year. As the most deprived area of our district, perhaps it makes sense to provide these sorts of services into Hurst Farm, and I'm very pleased that they have in the past. Thank you very much.
Becky, do you want to respond to that at all?
Yes, on the final question around the Hurst Farm, yeah, we do work closely with Freedom, our sports development team, who deliver activities on the estate, and then we also work closely with their active communities manager at Freedom, who's currently still on furlough, but will be coming back into centres on the 1st of November. So again, we'll be working with Freedom on providing those free swimming lessons for the host farm children. Thank you.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's really to address Councillor Gamble's point about why are we noting it, and perhaps I could assist her by taking her to page 22 of Freedom Leisure's report, the balance sheet, and the biggest cost in that is staffing costs. Now that translates into local jobs. And that's why we must note the report, because we have a duty of care to maintain oversight on how what we do impacts on the quality of life of people in the Derbyshire Dales. That's why it's being noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Ash, I believe you would like to make some comment about Councillor Gamble's point.
Yeah, if I could just clear it up. When we first presented the final report to members, prior to awarding the contract to Freedom, there was a request from members that we updated on a regular basis the performance of the contract over the life of the contract. If members wish to have that just emailed out to them or sent out in a different format rather than being open for discussion at council or committee, then I'm sure that can be recognised, but that was the reason it came here.
Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hughes has touched upon the point I wanted to really ask, but I echo his comments and in relation to the cleanliness, but I've also received, with it being very close onto my ward, some very positive comments about how COVID friendly and safe it is from people that are using that. The question I would like to ask, and it's just basically if there are 130 plus viewers, they would, just in relation to the Bakewell boiler, it said it's been replaced. What environmental benefits have we got from that boiler? Because obviously, I'm sure Freedom Leisure are aware that we are looking at becoming carbon neutral by 2030, and they want to work with us as partners. But what are the environmental benefits of that boiler? Is that something we can say? And I do apologise I didn't ask the question earlier. It's just I've been very busy all week. Thank you.
Certainly not my area of expertise, unfortunately, so I'm not sure I can comment on that right now, but we obviously with Bakewell coming back online pretty soon, that boiler will be fired up and we can perhaps produce a paper for Ashley to share with you on the benefits of that installation.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I've got no more speakers. It's been moved and seconded. Jason, would you like to do the count now, please?
Thank you, Charles. Changing the view on YouTube. The recommendations on page 4 of the document pack have been moved and seconded. So if you could indicate as a call out your name whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Burford.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
I'll do 4.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor O'Brien.
4.
Councillor Pawley.
4.
Councillor Purdy.
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Statham.
4.
Councillor Sutton.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
And Councillor Wakeman.
4.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. So that's passed. Moving on to item 7, housing renewal policy. Tim, would you like to take us through that, please?
By all means, Chair. I'm not going to repeat what's in the report, which sets out the background to what the regulatory reform order requires us to do and requires the housing renewal policy to do. The main thing to note really is the most significant change that we're proposing is the removal of the means test, the test of resources, for those disabled facility grant applicants where they have an overall contribution of £5,000 or less. The main reason for that is over the last few years we've been carrying out some research, I suppose you could say, with people who have those small contributions, and found that a considerable number of them have dropped out of the equation, not had those adaptations. Test of resources is based on a notional loan that an applicant is thought to be able to raise, and the reason given most often is that they can't actually afford to raise those loans. So in consultation with the Adult Care Occupational Therapy team, we're proposing the removal of those low-level test of resources results. For information, that would have meant a difference of £27,000 to the budget last year. We did actually underspend by £34,000, so it's containable within the budget. I'm happy to take any questions, of course, Chair.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm happy to move the report. As Tim says, the main reason for this report coming to Council is in 2.7, but it's good to see 1.2 that we're able to have the opportunity to enhance the level of support grant to the disabled facilities. So move the report, Chair.
Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, I'd like to second this. It's an excellent report. I can't see any problems with it at all.
I've just had a reminder that Councillor O'Brien wishes to raise a point of order. Do you want to do that now, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a procedural matter, really. At the earlier meeting this afternoon of the member development group, we went through the members' guide for meetings procedure. Well, it was very clear that after each item, the chair allows time for questions before proposals are moved and seconded. I was wanting to ask whether that's actually going to happen in this meeting, or whether that's something which is left for some other occasion. I noticed on the last two items, they both been moved and seconded before there is an opportunity for questions. Questions are different from speeches.
Okay, do you want to say anything about that, James?
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't at the meeting earlier on today, so I would like to review the discussion that took place earlier on. Well, certainly in terms of debates at committee, they're not governed in the same way that the debate would be at full council. So it would be acceptable to take questions on an item before it's formally proposed and seconded. But ultimately, Chairman, that's at your discretion to seek a mover and seconder at whichever point you decide. But formally, those rules aren't necessarily required in committee at this stage. So as an action, I'll go away and review what Member Development Group discussed this afternoon. And if we do implement that, I'd like to send out some formal guidance on it, subject to the comments of the Member Development Group. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, James. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to pick a couple of items out and have them mentioned in a public arena such as this is, because they are very much things that I think we should be congratulating ourselves on.
Do that on your website.
Pardon? I beg pardon? Can I carry on?
Yeah, carry on, Councillor.
Yeah, one, it is, again, just a note, congratulations over the Green Homes grant that we received and are usefully putting into effect. And secondly, is the substance of this, which is something that very much accords with my sort of a social conscience, which I'm always pleased when a local authority like this goes along with. I think it's a very welcome amendment that we can take away the £5,000 that might otherwise be needed to access the disabled facilities grant, particularly at this time when, of course, employment and incomes are in a rather fragile state. for a question, I would perhaps just to ask the author of this report how this information is now going to be widely disseminated, particularly directly to those who would be able to avail themselves of this.
Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I could pick that up. I can assure councillors that our occupational therapy colleagues at the County Council are waiting for the outcome of this report, and we'll be going to those clients that they've got who previously dropped out of the system to see if we can now assist. First point of contact with Disabled Facilities Grant is through Call Derbyshire at Derbyshire County Council, and they'll be disseminating the information out to their clients. We also do regular bits of advertising through Dales Matters and others about Disabled Facilities Grants, and I've already spoken to Jim about an article for the next edition of that based on a case study. So we'll be picking that up as best we can.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Burfoot.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one or two questions. First of all, in terms of the Disabled Facilities Grant, how permanent is this, or are the adaptations that are granted or grant aided by this scheme? I mean, I wonder if a property is adapted as a result of a grant made to the occupant, and especially a privately owned property, if it's then sold or if it's rented, if it's relet, obviously, is there any time scale within which this has to take place? Because obviously, if it's very soon after the grant has been made and the adaptation has been carried out, then the value of the grant could be completely squandered if it's sold to somebody who doesn't have any disability and doesn't require that adaptation. So, and also going on from there, in terms of time scale, again, what if perhaps the receiver of this grant passes away very quickly after the grant has been made? Quite a lot of money. You see, the maximum is over £50,000, I think. Quite a lot of money, public money, could be expended on a privately owned property, which may not be, or the value of it or the benefit may not be fully realised within a reasonable space of time. So the other thing is about empty properties and unused holiday and weekend cottages, for instance. Does this come under this, in terms of empty dwelling management orders, does that come under that category? And finally, I don't think Tim Bron would be surprised to hear me mention licensing of housings in multiple occupation. We have one that's very problematic in Matlock, which Tim knows all about. In fact, I even had an email this morning about problems in the middle of the night. So obviously the report does concentrate on the benefits of providing accommodation for particularly young people in these HMOs. But what about the poor residents who live, and neighbours who live nearby and have to put up with antisocial behaviour on a regular basis? This is something which, it says the system of licensing is supported by a full inspection and enforcement service as detailed below. Well, I think, and it says about an improvement notice required perhaps. Well, I think this needs to be more carefully administered, and I think we need to take firmer action against the owners of these properties. In this case, it's Ark Housing of Buxton, and there seem to be a number of problems connected with that organisation in terms of the properties that they own in Buxton as well. So it's not just the one in Matlock, and there's one in Matlock Bath, I believe, as well, but I don't know what problems are emanating from that one. But where the property is in a terrace or a semi-detached situation, obviously neighbours are going to be disadvantaged, and their amenities are going to be affected seriously by any antisocial behaviour, which is what happens regularly in Dale Road in Matlock. Thank you.
Tim, do you want to respond to that, please?
Yeah, Councillor Burfoot, please pick me up if I miss anything. I think I've got all your questions down. In relation to conditions on the grants and how long they last for, page 63 of the agenda does set out the repayment conditions in Appendix 1 of the policy. Basically, there is a 10-year condition period that relates to these grants in which a certain amount of grant may be reclaimed in certain circumstances. As you'll appreciate, many applicants for disabled facilities grants are older people. Where an applicant does pass away, we wouldn't reclaim the grant money on the event of their passing away. However, if the person to whom the property is left was to sell the property, dispose of the property, then those repayment conditions may kick in at that point. we do reclaim a very small number of grants, a handful of grants each year, and that money goes back into the council's reserves. In relation to empty properties, we carry out, at the moment, we offer a reactive service. So if we get complaints about nuisance caused by an empty property, the environmental health team will investigate that. The proactive service that we used to operate when we had an empty property officer has long since passed away, and that's part of the effects of austerity over the last 10 years. In relation to HIMO licensing, this policy is about housing, not about antisocial behaviour. It deals with the housing conditions that houses in multiple occupations and other houses are kept in, and that's all that this particular policy will deal with. The antisocial behaviour issues do need to be picked up, but not through this.
Can I just come back on that, Chair? In terms of the condition of the housing, I mean, the property in Matlock is under invested in terms of the external appearance. I don't know what the internal condition is like, but externally, it does actually embarrass neighbours, I think, and also passers by, as it's in the town centre. And the external quality is, to be honest, quite appalling.
Tim, do you want to respond to that or not?
Well, again, the appearance of the property is no consequence to this particular policy. This deals with the condition of the property and its suitability for living in, not what it looks like.
Okay, thank you. I've no other councillors waiting to speak. It's been moved and seconded, so we'll move to the vote, please, Jason.
Thank you, Chair. So we're voting on the recommendation on page 45 of the document pack that's been moved. For, against, or abstain. Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Pawley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Wakeman.
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thanks, Jason. We'll move on to item 8, the Ashbourne Neighbourhood Plan, Regulation 16, public consultation. Mike, will you take us through that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As the report sets out, the Ashbourne Neighbourhood Plan has been in preparation for a number of years now. It's now reached what's known as Regulation 16 public consultation stage, which is the first and final public and formal stage, having been through a number of periods of local consultation within Ashbourne itself. The representations that are set out in the report, those ones will be then sent on and through to an appointed examiner who will be asked to look at the plan in terms of how it satisfies the basic conditions and whether it's met the statutory requirements for its preparation. There are two aspects to the report, Chair. Firstly, that the content, the comments received during the initial 6 weeks consultation period are set out for members' consideration. And secondly, for officers' comments on the contents of the Ashbourne Neighbourhood Plan, as set out in the appendix, are there again for members' consideration. Without wanting to go into the details of the contents of the appendix, there are essentially a number of elements to those comments. Firstly, where the Ashbourne Neighbourhood Plan, in officers' views, does not meet the basic conditions statement, particularly in relation to providing a positive approach towards development. There are a number of comments made within the plan that we make some representations on about the necessity for and the reference to Ashbourne Airfield, where the Ashbourne Airfield, the vast majority, falls outside of the jurisdiction of the Neighbourhood Plan itself. And second and finally, the duplications of policy that the Ashbourne Neighbourhood Plan includes, those policies duplicating those within the local plan, and we don't think they're necessary to be included within the plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Councillor Bull.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As Mike has just said, and as I made it clear at the beginning, I am actually on the Ashbourne Town Council. I'm quite. It is a long time in coming forward. This, if I can remember, I think we started off in about 2012, starting this off, and it's just been so long-winded and pushed around. I find it disappointing for the issue of the consultation. They've only had 12 submissions, which doesn't really, look as though it's in full support at the moment. And as regards that, and there seems to be a lot of conflicting issues that you've brought up, Mike. A question I'd like to ask, in your opinion, is this going to be something that we put forward and it will be thrown out due to those issues, or would it be better to go back and Town Council actually be able to look into these a bit more deeper to put them in place before it does go on to the full examiner?
Thanks, Councillor Bull. Chair, there has been, as Councillor Bull has said, a number of sort of time periods over which this plan has been prepared. Myself and other officers have been working with the Town Council and the Neighbourhood Plan group in Ashbourne to try and get to a position where the plan is potentially a little bit better than it is in terms of its content. But we agreed earlier in the year that given the time that it's taken to get to where we are, that the view would be that we would take all the comments that were being made by ourselves as a district council would be then made and put forward to an examiner, and for the examiner to then to determine to what extent he felt or she felt that it was appropriate in regard to the neighbourhood plan meeting the basic conditions requirements and the statutory requirements.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Right, thank you, Chair. Some questions and a comment, but if Mike would like to sort of give me his overview of my comment, that would be good. First of all, though, Mike, a direct question. Would you not agree with me that community renewable energy considerations and a dark sky policy is a valid subject for a neighbourhood plan?
Chair, in this particular instance, the origins of a neighbourhood plan and every neighbourhood plan have to be from within the community, and the evidence has to show that there is an issue being raised during the preparation of a plan which necessitates a policy being included within it. In this particular instance, there is no evidence for any evidence being put forward by residents or local groups other than the county council, which would suggest that a renewable energy policy or a dark skies policy would be something that they'd want to see come forward, and it's on that basis that we have made those representations. This is a similar issue to one that arose within the Doveridge neighbourhood plan, and the examiner at that particular point in time made that same point, that there has to be evidence coming from within the community to support that, and that just because the county council have a particular view on a particular topic doesn't mean to say it's necessary to include it within a neighbourhood plan.
Yes, no, that's a good answer. My comment is, I thought it was very interesting to reflect on what had been said within this report about the time frames, which, to my mind hints at changes that are being pushed by the government, which might well alter something of this framework, and indeed the realizations that should come about from having a neighbourhood plan. And I'm referring specifically to this white paper that we've received on planning changes that mentions neighbourhood plans and indeed local plans at several junctures. I'm just wondering now whether in fact any groups coming to you for advice about neighbourhood planning shouldn't be given, as it were, some comment, your thoughts, as it were, on how this white paper might indeed have the beginnings of undermining neighbourhood planning as we used to know it.
Chair, the white paper is actually very supportive of neighbourhood plans, and it still seeks to ensure that local communities are supported in preparing neighbourhood plans. The dilemma that neighbourhoods have and communities have in terms of thinking about whether or not to take forward neighbourhood plans is more about what format and structure and what purpose they will have in the future, given the nature of what's being suggested within the white paper. And I think that's the unknown quantity at this particular point in time, what the future will hold for both local plans and neighbourhood plans. In terms of the Ashbourne neighbourhood plan and the timing of that, clearly, we're at a stage where we're working towards trying to get an examination done potentially early next year, and with a fair wind getting to the referendum in May, when the earliest opportunity is there to take the plan back to referendum. And that won't be affected by what's coming forward within the white paper, because there's certainly a significant amount of review and consultation work to be assessed by the government before any changes are made.
Councillor Burf.
And then just very finally, I don't need a reply to this as it were, but I was very taken by the note, as it were, on page 76 in reference to any proposed Ashbourne bypass. And of course, I immediately thought about the allusions to the Water Lane site that has always been linked to this.
Councillor Burford.
No, Chair, I was going to mention the same point that Councillor Ratcliffe's just made, so I won't raise it again. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I had two questions, but my case was answered to Councillor Bull's question. Covered the first one. But my second question is really about the airfield development and its relationship to the neighbourhood plan. And I fully understand that the airfield development is largely outside Ashbourne, yet it of course will have a significant effect on the Ashbourne as a town. If for no other reason, the amount of traffic will increase enormously. But there is also the opportunity for the shops, and I think the shops were a key element of the Ashbourne plan, that the need for developing the town centre was mentioned several times. But it's really, I've asked after some advice here from Mr. Hayes about how you tackle these areas outside the scope of your plan, when there is going to be a significant impact from the development there on the area covered by the plan. Thank you.
Chair, the Ashbourne airfield is a strategic site that's identified within the Derbyshire Dales local plan, and it does cover a number of different, it's incorporated within a number of different parishes in that part of the district. The neighbourhood plan itself only covers the parish of Ashbourne, and legally all that can be included within the neighbourhood plan are policies that relate to the parish of Ashbourne itself. Chair, the members will be aware that we obviously have an adopted local plan which sets out a very wide-ranging sort of strategic approach to development, and as I said before, the Ashbourne airfield is a strategic site identified within that. The strategic issues are ones which can be dealt with by this authority through the determination of applications for the development of that particular site, and that's how I see the relationship being between the local plan and the neighbourhood plan, and one that's set out and enshrined within the legislation. The neighbourhood plan sets the strategic policies for an area in a widest sense, and the neighbourhood plan sets those more localised, bottom-up developed policies.
Thank you. Chair, can I just come back with a second supplementary question there?
Yes, okay.
It won't take long. Would it be sensible to extend the scope of the plan, because the plan doesn't necessarily have to cover only one parish, it can cover several parishes. Would it be sensible for the local plan to be extended to include the airfield? Thank you.
Chair, the Ashbourne Neighbourhood Plan was subject to a lot of discussion between the parishes in that particular area at the district council suggestion that actually it might be better to have a wider ranging and wider coverage of a neighbourhood plan. But the parishes in and around Ashbourne decided that they wished to not be involved in that process, and so therefore we ended up in a situation where we had a neighbourhood area that just covered Ashbourne parish itself.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. A question through you to Mike. Mike, listening to the issues which the district council has got with the draft plan, it does seem to me that these are very much process related, and I sort of going on from what Sue Bull was saying, it does seem that it means that the town council has wasted quite a lot of time and effort over the years in pursuing policies which it shouldn't have done. So my question is, I understand the council officers support the process here. Is it that the neighbourhood plan group and the town council have not been listening or accepting the district council officers' advice, or is it that the advice perhaps hasn't been strong enough? Because it is disappointing to me, I think all of us, that you're having to make these representations at this stage.
Mike.
Chair, the long and short of it is that the parish councils in all of the neighbourhood plans that we've been involved in have come from the preparation of those plans from a particular sort of standpoint, which is to ensure that they see development proposals and policies which try to support their particular viewpoint and try to support their community and the evidence that's been put forward by the communities during the preparation of those plans. And clearly some of those policies at times and those proposals at times will be contrary to the advice that we give to those particular parishes. It's not necessarily for us as officers to say those are wrong and to really stamp our feet in. It's to really there to try and provide those parishes with a guiding hand. And clearly there is as with the local plan, there is a sort of adjudication process which they have to go through with the examination. And it's the examination stage which will provide that sort of independent audit of how the plan has been prepared and take a view as to looking at both sides of the fence, if you like, in terms of the view that and the evidence that the town and parishes councils put forward and the view that the district council puts forward. And what has happened in previous iterations of neighbourhood plans elsewhere is that the appointed examiner has, if you like, compromised on the approach that both the parish council have taken and also the district council have taken. And to be fair, in this particular instance, I would see that being the same particular approach of outcome for the neighbourhood plan.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendations 1 to 4. I'll be looking to, with interest at the examiners.
Councillor Hobson, they have been moved. Would you like to second in that case?
Yeah, I'm happy to second. Can I just say that I will be looking forward to the examiner's report finding. I think the questions from the members tonight have been very useful questions, and also the report was excellent, Mike. A lot of background information, but I was disappointed about the number of consultation responses we received.
Chair, I think.
Chair, may I just come in here? Sorry, Councillor Bull. When you came to me at the beginning, I asked a question mainly more than actually proposing it. But upon listening to what Mike has just said and the other comments, then I am happy now to move this to go on to the examiner for them to obviously go through the adjudication with it and to bring it back, and then obviously we'll work from there as it is. So at the moment, when I first came, I didn't actually propose the recommendations, but I am happy to do that now after listening to some of the questions that have been put through.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ball, my misunderstanding. Thank you for pointing that out. Councillor Hobson, have you finished or?
Yeah, I'm happy just to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Wayne.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I say, I've just picked this up the last couple of days, really, because I've been busy. But looking at it, point 1.7, it says that there was an extension. For the clarity of those people who may have read the report, what was the reason to require a 6-week extension to the consultation period? That's my first question. Do you want me to ask them all, or do you want me to ask them one at once?
I'll answer that one. There was an oversight on our part in terms of the requirements of the legislation to consult with stakeholders. We focused on consulting with the local community and working with the town council to make sure that within Ashbourne there was an appropriate amount of consultation undertaken, taking account of the current sort of circumstances. But what we did was, unfortunately, at that particular time, we missed the fact that we actually should have been consulting with the stakeholders as required by the legislation, and that's necessitated an extension.
Thanks very much for your honesty. The second is point 2.1. I take Councillor Bull's point about disappointing number of responses, really. I'm going to ask a question and answer it, but if you would give me a comment, Mr. Hayes, what do you think was the reason for the poor response? And could it be that the community thought that most of the damage to Ashbourne had already been caused by large volumes of housing that had already been allowed to happen? What do you honestly think was the reason for the lack of consultation?
I think one of the reasons primarily is around the sort of circumstances we find ourselves in at the moment. In previous times, we would have been able to make documentation available much more widely than we have, and the government has pushed us into a situation where we've moved more to digital by default, which we have embraced in this particular instance. We have worked with the town council to make some documentation available within the community. We have used press releases, we've used social media and all of the normal channels that we would use to push out our message that, you know, there is a consultation exercise going on. And even towards the end of the first period of 6 weeks, we had a second reminder for people in Ashbourne to engage in this particular process. So in that regard, I don't think we failed in terms of publicising the amount and the availability of the documentation. It's possibly just the circumstances that we find ourselves in, the amount of time that's gone on during the preparation has led to, you know, this particular level of submissions. Had there been something more controversial within the plan, and had there been, you know, a lot of allocations of land over and above what we have in our local plan, that might then have generated a significant number of representations in themselves. So, you know, it could be a combination of timing, COVID, and the fact that there is, you know, not that significant amount of controversial items within the plan itself.
Yeah, thank you. Just, I just wish to ask a question in relation to point 2.3. The report directs us to paragraph 1.8, but I couldn't find paragraph 1.8 in the document. That was all. I just wanted to know, was it a relevant document or a relevant point, or?
Just let me check that, Chair.
And my final question is,
that's 1.7.
Oh, sorry. And my final question is, where can I find evidence to support the fact that Ashbourne does not require affordable housing?
Chair, I think you need to direct that point to the Director of Housing.
Okay, Councillor Burfoot, you want to come back again?
No, thank you.
You don't? Okay, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm sure that Ashbourne Town Council and Mike representing our authority will, this is work in progress really, and I'm sure that it will come together in the end, and there's certain nuances that need to be sorted. But I want to reference the fact that Highways has already received investment in Ireland and monies from D2N2. So again, that's work in progress. We've tackled the issue of HGVs in Ashbourne, and I'm grateful to Anne Wright in Ashbourne for setting up a town team after my involvement in the requirement to look at the loss of high street shops. We've got a problem per se throughout the country with loss of high street shops, but those issues are being addressed on a wider scale. So the issues of loss of high street shops, traffic, they're all being addressed. They're being addressed not only through this Ashbourne plan, but the wider local plan that we've got, which is being revisited soon. And the fact that they're also being addressed in the Derbyshire Economic Recovery Board, the DEP and D2N2. And we will be applying and have indeed applied for more monies to help the high street. So those just address some of the points raised, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Rob, would you like to come in to answer Councillor Wayne's last question?
Yes, Chair. I was just trying to find the reference in the report, as I wasn't expecting the question on this evening. I think the point is there's a need in most settlements within the district, but in Ashbourne we've been particularly successful at meeting affordable housing need over several years, and that means we need to take a more nuanced approach when it comes to current and future demand. So we know, for example, that for single people there will be a need for affordable housing, and for older people there'll be a need for bungalow sheltered accommodation. But in terms of large numbers of family housing, we've been very successful. So I think that's the main point to bear in mind, really, that we have a good track record in Ashbourne, more than perhaps other parts of the district, and we need to be more nuanced in terms of our approach.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Hughes, do you want to come back in again? Councillor Hughes?
Sorry, I'm having difficulty unmuting. Sorry, thank you, Chair. This isn't a comment to officers. This is a comment, I think, for the political groups. I've just been looking through the membership of this committee, which is concerned with the environment. I know that Councillor Bull is the only member from, I think is the only member from Ashbourne. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And given the issues in Ashbourne about pollution and about the road traffic and the development, the major development is going on around Ashbourne, perhaps the political groups should, and particularly the Conservative and Liberal Democrat groups, should be thinking about the representation on this committee. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I've got no other. Oh, we have Councillor Wakeman. Oh no, I have no other speakers. So we'll move to the vote, please, Jason.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendations on page 66 of the document pack have been moved and seconded. So if you could indicate whether you're for, against, or abstain. Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Pawley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Wakeman.
For.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. We'll move on to item 9, Affordable Housing Development Programme. Before Isabel starts on this, I'd just like to tell everybody that who doesn't know that Isabel is leaving us after 11 years service. She's going to work for a housing association, so not all that different. And we'd just like to thank you, Isabel, for all the years of service and work that you've put in. And I'm sure there's lots of families in Derbyshire Dales who are very grateful for the efforts that you've made on their behalf. Thank you. Over to you on the paper then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's very kind. So I'm providing tonight a report, an updating report on the affordable housing programme. Just so in terms of completions last year, the target was 51 and we exceeded that by 82 affordable homes. This year, obviously, we've had a dip as regards because of COVID. So we're expecting about 12 homes to complete this year, having had a target of 80. But we do have a very strong programme coming through the pipeline. And at table 2 in the report, you can see the schemes that are coming through, a mixture of housing association and community-led schemes, which is fantastic, as well as affordable homes that are coming through on private developer-led sites, which housing associations will then purchase. So, and these homes in table 2, we're expecting those, quite a lot of those are on site, but we expect those to come through in the next 2 to 3 years as well, but the remaining ones. In addition to those, and those that I've just talked about, that they total 331 homes, affordable homes. In addition, there are a number of other private developer-led sites that are going a bit more slowly. Some potentially have stalled, but we're looking at them and whether they can come forward in a different way. But there's 124 affordable homes potentially there. So if you combine all that, we've got 455 affordable homes coming through the pipeline, which is tremendous. I'm of course, as the rural housing enabler, I'm particularly excited about the community-led schemes and the schemes coming through on more difficult sites, such as we've got the 4 homes coming through at Winster, which are on site now, and at Tannington, they finished earlier in the year, with 4 homes there for local people, and you know, they will make a tremendous difference. And of course, at Bakewell, we've got 30 homes for local people on site now, which again is really tremendous. And that's it, unless I've got any questions, please.
Well, thank you very much, Isabel. Councillor Morley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, notwithstanding the relevant and succinct observation before about procedure, I would like to move this report as written. The Cogginses have brought us our usual ray of sunshine, Chair, and exceeding the target of 51 to 82 is a great achievement. So I would like to put the motion on the table that we accept the report as read.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sutton. Councillor Sutton.
I think this is an absolute wonderful report, something very close to all our hearts, and I would like to second this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor O'Brien, are you got your name down for this one? Is that right?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before I make the point I was going to do, I want to echo your comments about Isabel. She had a lot of grief from me over the last 18 months, which I'm happy to publicly apologise. But more importantly, I think, or equally importantly, I want to wish her all the best and thanks on behalf of the communities in this part of the Dales, the local villages. She's been an absolute asset to our villages and been really wonderful working with them. And so I'd like this opportunity on behalf of not just the villages in my ward, but all the communities throughout the district to thank you very much for your contribution and wish you all the best with Nottingham community. Now, in welcoming the report, many of you will know I've spoken before about the issue of homes not being affordable for working people to buy in many parts of the district. So the question I want to ask is, what is likely to be the impact of the government's new First Homes policy on the programme and the availability of homes to purchasers up to 50% of market value? And secondly, arising from the corporate peer review, which recommended that we look to extend the range of our affordable housing programme, the Leaders Liaison Group proposed that we would have a number of workshops on affordable housing to enable members to influence our affordable housing policy. So I'd like to know what progress has been made on arranging those workshops so that we don't have future affordable homes programmes set in stone before members are able to have the opportunity to influence them.
Isabel.
Well, other people may want to chip in here. Planning may want to chip in, and Rob may want to chip in as the head of housing. Certainly, of course, our local plan says, and we know that we have real issues with affordable housing in the district, and the main need is for rent. There's some need for shared ownership, but there are difficulties with other tenures and people affording those other tenures. There's still there's proposals. The government has proposals around reforms of the planning system, which Mike will know a lot more about than I will, and we'll be bringing papers, no doubt, in relation to that. And we will see what the outcome of that is. But the key issue for Derbyshire Dales is that issue of affordable housing, and where we are building, for example, I was talking about Bakewell, that's on site, and Winster that's on site. Those homes are for local people, and that means very local people. There'll be a Section 106 agreement with the Peak Park that means that people will need to have a 10-year local connection to that parish or to the adjoining parish. There's a cascade that starts to kick in after 3 months, but it is for that parish and those parishes. So it is important that what we build reflects the need that is there.
Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Brien.
What I would say is that I'm not talking about the planning white paper. I'm talking about the new First Homes policy, which I think we're expecting regulations fairly shortly, which is fundamentally changing the nature of affordable homes provision outside the national parks, because they're exempt. So it is the First Homes issue. I was interested in hearing your views on how that's going to affect the makeup of the programme. And then there's a specific question on the Leaders Liaison Group proposal to set up some workshops so that members can have an input into the affordable housing programme in the future.
Do I,
Isabel?
Okay. I think in terms of the member workshop, we had to cancel the first workshop because of the emergence of the COVID pandemic. I have had discussions with external contacts who are happy to come and speak at a workshop. I think and I think you've also referenced Councillor O'Brien, other people that would perhaps be willing to come and speak as well to give a market view, which is very important. So I welcome that. I think it is down to me to organise, and it's just an issue of capacity that I haven't got that done so far, but I appreciate it is in the peer review action plan, and I've got that to organise over the next few months. So if you can bear with me, I will get that on the agenda. In terms of the First Homes programme, it is still early days for that, and there is undoubtedly going to be an impact, but I think Isabel makes a strong point there in terms of the local connection and the how these schemes would actually be financed. Given the open market values in the district, I think the current average price of a dwelling in the Derbyshire Dales is £280,000 or thereabouts. If you discount that by 50%, it still remains a very expensive property, even the lower quartile prices. And we know from our parish needs surveys that if your household income is, say, £24,000 in total for a working household in the district, that doesn't give you much headroom to get a mortgage on a property that's still worth or valued at over £100,000. So these are going to be difficult policies to implement, I think, in terms of building something that we think we can sell and at the same time finding customers that can buy it. And of course, that will mostly be down to the private sector, because we will need to work with them to deliver these kind of models. I don't believe our local housing association partners would particularly want to pursue that kind of model. So I think it's early days, and we need to see how the sector deals with this new, let's say, opportunity. But I think it will be difficult given the salaries that our residents are on in general. And if they could access home ownership at a lower level, they probably would have already done so. But it's going to be a very difficult policy, I think, to implement. But we have to remain open to the prospect of having to do it if the need is there.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry that you're going, Isabel, and thank you very much for all the contributions that you've given to Wirksworth and the Community Land Trust over the last couple of years, and in Wirksworth in general before that. A direct question: can I be confident that all the affordable housing that has been set out in tables 2 and 3 will go ahead, and that all the monies are in place for the development? And then just sort of further to that, it is something that has been previously raised, as it were, actually about the planning white paper, which has raised the bar for 106 payments from, I think it's 10 units to 50 units. And do you think that this will have a significant impact on our future affordable housing programme?
So, shall I start? Is that okay? So, in terms of the affordable housing programme, I've put them in 2 tables for a reason, really. So the table 2 with the 331 homes are schemes that are going to complete this year, and a lot of them are on site, or you know, I've got a strong sense of them happening. There's some movement between the 2 tables, but table 3 with the 124 schemes, some of those schemes have been a bit slow, or they appear to, or have stalled, or but they look like some of them will come back in maybe as they are, or in a different form. But certainly there's a lot of strength in the programme, and I'm confident that a lot of the schemes in table 2 will come forward, and through some work, those schemes in table 3, but perhaps in a different form. Just trying to remember your other question, which was around
about 106 payments being more difficult to obtain because the number of major development will, the threshold will rise to 50, I think it is, 50
Yes.
plus.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it in the report,
You did.
and we still, we, and again, planning or Rob may have your view on this, but we just need to see how this comes through. But yes, I mean, the good thing is a lot of those, most of the programme, the 331 are on site, they're happening, and they're likely to be delivered as they are. But then there's other sites coming through that may not have started yet or whatever, that whether Section 106 perhaps hasn't been agreed, or where there may be some movement. But
yeah,
I really don't know.
Just for clarification, Isabel, you or indeed Rob, when we put together the local plan, the contribution of Peak Park to housing development was 400 over 20 years, an abysmal 20 per year. I note in table 2, there's a number of areas, Bradwell, for example, Hartington, Tideswell, where affordable housing is being developed. Are these contributions towards that 400 housing? If they're not, can you tell me how many of the Peak Park development contributions have been completed to date?
If I can answer that, I'll answer that particular question. Those assumptions are made and agreed with the National Park over the period of the local plan, which is a 20-year period from 2013 to 2033, and they're based upon historic rates and anticipated development that was anticipated to come forward at the time we were preparing the plan. Those developments that are included within table 2 that Councillor Radcliffe refers to will all count towards the contribution of the National Park to meeting our needs across the whole of the district.
Is that okay, Mike? Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I mean, Rob's answered Councillor Bryan's question, but just to add to the point that the workshops were put on hold because of COVID, so it's not been forgotten. But it's been overtaken also by, I think the consultation is still on for the first homes from memory. And of course, now we've got the white paper on planning reform, which we've got to address. So I personally see no point in engaging in workshops when everything's out in the ether. And for new councillors, I need to emphasise the fact that this council has had an excellent reputation over many years for building affordable homes. But unfortunately, that's built on the back of land base that we had, which is now getting near to exhaustion state. And I think what we've got to remember as well is this, the fact that we live in a low wage economy, but with very high price property units. And that dichotomy is extremely difficult to address. But I like to think that under this Conservative administration, we'd change that round, and thanks very much to Rob and his team and to Isabel. And we're starting now to put more out towards rent, which I think is needed today. I'm sure everybody would like to get a foot on the ladder. So let's not forget there's still a great need for homes to be built out there. And that's our greatest problem. And finally, I hope you're not going because you have been receiving grief, Isabel, but I'd like to say thank you very much indeed for all the hard work you've put into this authority. My only regret is that we never achieved the affordable homes at Bonsall through a change of parish council, through a NIMBY approach, and that was a great disappointment to me, and I'm sure to Mrs. Pawley as ward member up there. So thank you very much and good luck to the future.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Pawley.
Yes, thank you. I don't know quite who to address it to, but I was listening to what Rob said about the amount of the low income that we have in this district, and the fact that the house prices are so high. I wondered, Rob, if there's any any use in looking at what other countries in Europe might be doing? I'm sure there must be other countries that are having the same problem, because house building does seem to depend an awful lot on what on the drive from private companies and what they're expecting to get. Are there any schemes in Europe that could help us look as a council, look at building housing that's suitable for exterior view, but will be affordable? Is there some way we could look at that and include that in the workshops that you're going to bring forward?
Thank you, Councillor Pauly. That's a really good question. I'd love to go on a trip and check out some of the European hotspots for housing development. I have been fortunate to see at housing conference some examples from Holland, and they're always pulled out as some of the great examples of how to let and build affordable homes, particularly off-site manufacture is one potential, although that tends to happen at scale and wouldn't necessarily work here. But there are different models. They are complicated, and that's part of the dilemma. If we're trying to bring something new to local people, we're doing it with our credentials and our standing as a local authority. So we've got to be really spot on and absolutely clear that what we might encourage to be built locally has credibility with local people, because we've got to convince customers and banks to invest in those kind of products. So whilst there might be different examples of how to do this in Europe, bringing it here would present challenges. But having said that, I'm the eternal optimist, and hopefully some entrepreneurial spirit will shine through, and with input from members and the industry alike, we might be able to find a way to do things which don't rely on market value. That's the dilemma, as Councillor Purdy said. And if Steve Capes was here, he would tell you that the people who live and work in the Dales are on the same average salaries as the people in Mansfield, and that doesn't equate mentally with what we think of the Derbyshire Dales. But there are a lot of people in low wage economy jobs, and we've got to find, if we want to encourage them into home ownership, we've got to find a model that works. And at the moment in the UK, that model doesn't really exist. So we may have to look further afield to find those examples.
Councillor Hughes, you want to come back again?
I haven't spoken on this one yet, I don't think, have I? I'd just like to say that I always enjoy reading reports from Robert Coggins, and I enjoyed reading this one from Isabel Coggins. So I haven't met at all, so thank you very much for this report. Can I just ask one detailed question about the report, and then I want to refer to the next item in relation to this. So the detailed question is on the foyer scheme in Matlock, which I understand is single person accommodation. Is that correct?
Yes, but I can't say a lot about this scheme.
No,
it's very, very early days.
Okay, right.
Although there has been quite a bit of negotiation around it, but once we have something more concrete, we'll be back.
Do you think we'll be able to achieve this before the end of the year, or is this something that will actually go out to 2021?
No, it's not. It's going to take some time to work out.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, I noted that we've got 455 houses, units of accommodation coming available in the and we've got in the next item, which is on home options allocation policy, we note there's a waiting list. There are registered applicants, 981 registered applicants. Does that 981 represent the demand for some of this affordable housing? What's the relationship between the two numbers, the number of housing units that are planned or are coming on stream that are in table 2 and 3 of this report, and then the number of applicants in the next item on the agenda?
Shall I answer this? So So yes, so in order to access the affordable homes in the district for rent, you do need to be registered on Home Options. So that number is from our housing register. So, but obviously the Home Option system is a live system, so the figure on it changes every day. So somebody will get allocated a home, and they'll drop off the register, and so there's people joining and dropping off all the time. But yes, that need does feed through to the homes that we need.
Okay, thank you. So there will be a continual demand, and in fact, we need more affordable housing to meet the current demand, let alone any future demand that will build up.
Yes, and it's getting that, meeting that need. It's looking at where those homes are in the district as well.
Yeah.
So if you're building in the Peak Park, there's a 10-year, there's local needs, there's a 10-year local connection for those homes. So you only build what that parish needs.
Okay, right, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Isabel. You will be sadly missed. That's been your last report. We've got no other speakers, so Jason, can we move to the vote, please?
Hand up since the beginning of this report, since it was first introduced, so I don't know why I've been missed. I seem to be prejudiced against sometimes, and this is an example, I'm afraid.
No, I've not got you down the list. I'm sorry. I'm being fed the list by.
My hand raised right from the beginning.
Okay, but I'm being fed a list by James, so he must have missed it. So if you'd like to speak now, then please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'd like to add my thanks to Isabel for the excellent work she's carried out for this authority over the last 11 years, and wish her all the best in the future with Nottingham Community Housing Association. I'd also like to ask if her post is going to be filled, because I don't think we, and the rural areas of this district, can do without someone doing that particular job. So I'd like to ask that for a start. But then looking at the recommendations, I can obviously go along with recommendation 1, outturn for 2019 to 20, which is obviously everyone knows about, and the houses are generally built, if not nearly completed. And item 3, or recommendation 3, the affordable housing programme for 2020 onwards. That's presumably table 3. Although I think you've got to be very optimistic to think that Harveydale Quarry is going to be developed in that time, or even Tansey House Gardens and Tansey White Willie Nursery. But anyway, that I can go along with that. But recommendation 2, that the proposed completions for 2020-21 be noted, is inaccurate, as the reply to Councillor Hughes has just proved, really. So in table 2, it does say completions 2020 onwards. So I think that is more accurate. I think the recommendation should be amended to reflect that. As if, like Councillor Hughes, I'm very mystified by not just the FOIA, so-called FOIA scheme and general needs, 104 dwellings somewhere in Matlock, which local members know absolutely nothing about whatsoever. So I think that's very optimistic if there's not even any planning application yet, never mind any consent granted. So we don't know what site it's going to be, whether it's allocated in local plan or not, for instance. And then in terms of Bakewell Road, Matlock, Bakewell Road, Darley-Dale rather, don't know where that is. It's got to be fairly close to Matlock, or it's Bakewell Road, I suspect. And also Old Hackney Lane, which is very close to Matlock. I don't know anything about those properties that are proposed either. So I think I'd like to know more about that, and why we've got this recommendation for completions in 2020 to 21. I think that needs to be amended. Thank you.
Okay, well, there's no more speakers. So Jason, if you can take the vote now, please.
Can I have the answer to those questions,
Oh,
please?
sorry, beg your pardon.
Chair, if I may, I think the table 2 does say completions from 2020 onwards, so that implies it's beyond this financial year going forward. So I'm not quite sure if I'm missing the point, but
the recommendation is 2021 in number 2 of recommendation.
That's just to explain that the 12 units are expected to come through in 2021. So that's 2.3.
Right.
That's what that's referring to.
Oh, right, okay. Right.
Apologies if that's not clear.
I think if we can just outline the other schemes that you've mentioned, Councillor Burfoot. So the Bakewell Road site is one that's already been granted permission and is on, I think they've just started now, opposite the Poppyfield Close development and the hospital site. So that's something that's already been to council and planning committee and is on site with the developer, and we've allocated grant funding to support that scheme. The Old Hackney Lane site is a pre-application work that would be normal work between the housing team and a local developer. So when that's more formalised, we'll be able to bring that more detail to members. And the same is true for the foyer scheme. So I have, and admit, I've been a bit coy about that because it is a very sensitive discussion with the landowner. We're not able to say who that landowner is at the moment, but I think members, you know, you've put a lot of faith in the housing team in the past, and I'd ask you to continue to do that as we bring this proposal together. If we were to have a more open discussion about that, we might spook the landowner and bring the scheme to an end, thereby losing a very substantial development for the Derbyshire Dale. So you need to bear with us while we continue our enabling work and bring that scheme to a point where it's able to become more public and come in front of members. I hope that's okay. Thank you.
Rob, you certainly have my support as leader on that. I think it's absolutely vital that anything that's close to business discussions is kept privy until such time as it can become public consultation.
Okay, I think there's no speakers now. So Jason, can you take the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. So we're voting on the recommendations on page 84 of the document pack. You could indicate whether you're for, against, or abstain. Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Burfoot.
Abstain.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Pawley.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Wakeman.
For.
16 for and 1 abstention, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. I'm minded that members have expressed concerns about sharing its screens for too long, so I'm going to call a 10-minute break. Can we all be back here at 7:55, please? Can you hear me, Jason?
Yes, I can hear you.
I hear. I hear Ruth's got your job now. Then your old job.
So I understand. I met them for lunch last week, and yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you expected?
I'll have to have a conversation with you about it.
Oh yes, okay.
When we're
okay.
not broadcasting.
Absolutely. We're not live though, are we? No.
We are, yes. Yeah.
Oh crikey.
Yeah.
Carry on, Chris. I think everyone will all enjoy it. All our 120 viewers will enjoy that.
Yes.
We do have the listen again feature, so even if it's not live.
There are 14 people watching.
Are we all here, Jason, do you reckon? Can we make a start? Jason, can we make a start, do you think?
Yes, I was just waiting for Councillor Gamble, and yeah, we're okay to start now.
Okay. Well, I hope you're all nicely refreshed now. So we're ready for item 10, which is the home options allocation policy. Simon, can you take us through that, please?
Thank you, Chair. This report details the proposed changes to the Council's allocations policy and access to home options. In summary, allocations policy set out how applicants are assessed to access the housing register and what priority they will be given, framed around the requirement of the Housing Act 1996. There have been key legal and statutory changes recently taken into account within this policy. Public consultation on the proposed changes has taken place and is included in the appendix, as is the equality impact assessment, which has been approved by the Council's policy officer. We look to seek approval of the proposed changes to the Council's allocations policy, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the report.
Thanks, Simon. Councillor Statham.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the recommendation. It's a well-written report that's very easily understandable, so I'm happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'd like to echo Councillor Statham's comments. It's an excellent report. Very interested to read all the comments that have come through. I'm happy to second.
James, I'm not getting anything. Can you tell me what who's next, please?
So Councillor Burfoot is next, and then Councillor Pawley.
Thank you. Councillor Burfoot, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree this is an excellent report. I just wanted to ask a question about the, I think it's in 2.4, proposed changes to allocation policy, reduction in the period of time required for applicants who are moving to give or receive support to a vulnerable person. And I think there's a big difference between 5 years and 6 months. So I don't know what is actually proposed. Are we going to, is it going to be flexible, or is it somewhere between the two timescales? I do think that people in Matlock do complain quite regularly when they're overlooked for a rented dwelling on a new development, and they find out that somebody from Nottingham or wherever, with very little connection to Derbyshire Dales, is allocated that particular property. So I think people would like, the general public, particularly residents of the Dales, would like to know just what is being proposed here.
Simon, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've moved it 5 years to 6 months, so it will be 6 months. It won't be anything in between. So if somebody has is moving to receive support from somebody who's lived here 6 months, or is moving to give support from somebody who's lived here for 6 months, that will qualify them for the register. I mean, obviously, we do a lot more than just check the timescales. We check what type of support they're needing to give, and that support is clearly needed to that person, either to give support or receive support within the Derbyshire Dales.
Councillor Pawley.
Thank you, Chair. Of the 981 people that are registered applicants seeking housing, can you say how long on average people have to wait to get something, and how many of these are going to now be the homeless people that will come into band B+?
Thank you, Chair. It really does change from area to area in terms of how long somebody waits for accommodation. And as the previous report that was brought in terms of new properties and where we built new properties, then that will have an impact. Movement into Ashbourne, as an example, is a reduced waiting time. Movement into Bakewell is a much longer waiting time. So it is really difficult to give a very general waiting time for somebody on the housing register. But as the policy states, we operate on a triangle or a pyramid basis. So people in Band A, there are very few of them. We recognise they need to move the quickest, and people in Band D with no housing need don't need to move anywhere near as quick. So of the 900, there are, I think, around 600 on the housing register who are in some priority needs, either bands A, B or C, and they obviously, depending on which band they choose and where they want to move to, will be dependent on how quickly that moves. Band B plus, as things stand, we ran a report last week, there's roughly about 24 people that would move into Band B. Those people are already on the housing register in a different banding, but they would be prioritised to move up into Band B plus. So on average, about 24 people at any one time.
Councillor Gamble.
So I didn't realise it would be so quickly. Hopefully this is not a stupid question. I'm sure Councillor Morley will tell me if it is. Of the people on the waiting list, can you tell what sort of proportion do get rehomed within the Derbyshire Dales? Would we expect all this list to be actually rehomed within the Derbyshire Dales, or is there an element of rehoming outside? I'm just interested. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, on average, each year, 300 to approximately 330 people are accommodated through home options in the Derbyshire Dales. The allocations policy and home options is shared across a number of local authority areas of which we share an allocations policy with, but those local connection requirements are based around those each individual local authority areas. So for somebody to move who's in the Derbyshire Dales to move to Amber Valley, then they would have to have a connection to Amber Valley to access accommodation in Amber Valley, and vice versa, unless there is no need for that accommodation and somebody further down the register gets that accommodation. So that there is a very small proportion of accommodation which has very little need, and people from outside of the Derbyshire Dales and outside of the home options area can actually access some of that accommodation from time to time.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question has actually been answered by in the answer to the last question. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, a comment, not a question. A comment because I remember some of my colleagues who raised issues about affordable housing numbers in relation to the affordable housing programme. It's always interesting to bear in mind the different ways in which housing need is assessed by our housing colleagues, the housing officers, through home options, and the planning process through the affordable homes need. This process makes absolutely no reference to income levels, where of course our affordable housing programme through the planning process is assessed entirely on income levels. So it's always interesting to see the contrasting numbers that you get from a planning-based system and the housing-based systems. And we always need to bear in mind when we wonder, I think as others have done, why the figures seem to be so different, that this is the reason.
Thank you. I've got no other speakers. It's been moved and seconded. So Jason, would you like to take the vote, please?
Yes, Chair. So the recommendation on page 89 of the document pack has been moved and seconded. If you could indicate whether you're for, against, or abstain. Councillor Butler?
For.
Councillor Ball?
For.
Councillor Burfoot?
For.
Councillor Froggatt?
For.
Councillor Finesse?
For.
Councillor Gamble?
For.
Councillor Hobson?
For.
Councillor Hughes?
For.
Councillor Morley?
For.
Councillor O'Brien?
For.
Councillor Pawley?
For.
Councillor Purdy?
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe?
For.
Councillor Statham?
For.
Councillor Sutton?
For.
Councillor Wayne?
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thanks, Jason. We'll move on to item 11, the last item, the use of glyphosate. Ash, would you like to take us through this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This report follows on from the motion that was debated at Council in January this year and outlines some of the work and the discussions that have taken place since that point. Firstly, I'd like to apologise for the typo in the recommendation. It is in fact option 2 that officers are recommending as per 4.3 of the report. I don't intend to go into the detail of the report, as I'm sure that members have now had a chance to read it, but both Sam Grisman, Clean and Green Manager, and myself are happy to take questions. I would ask that members who have asked questions over the last 2 or 3 days don't duplicate those in order to give all members an opportunity to ask questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ash. Councillor O'Brien, would you like to kick off on this one? Councillor O'Brien.
I just want at this stage to thank Ash for all the answers to the questions that he's given us. Thank you, Chair.
We're at item 11.
Yep. I
thought
can't.
you had an amendment.
I can't propose an amendment because there's no proposal on the table yet, Chair.
Okay, fair enough. Would somebody like to, have you got a list of? I can't see any speakers, James. Have you got any?
Chair, for the sake of moving the debate, because I'm well aware of Councillor Bryan's move for an amendment, I think we need to put a motion on the table in order that we can bring Councillor Bryan in. So for the sake of that, I will move the recommendations and certainly approval recommendation option 2. I'm sure that will find a seconder.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Brien.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Purdy, for enabling that. Chair and colleagues, the purpose of this amendment is to, I hope, reflect I think was a unanimous feeling at our meeting back in January, where I think we all wanted to move forward to the day when we don't use glyphosate in our weed killing activities. And there was some debate, differences of opinion about the way we get there, and this report, I think, is a useful milestone along that road. The intention of the amendment I'm going to put forward, and James, perhaps you could put it onto the screen for everyone to see. Are we able to do that? Save me talking in a vacuum.
Jason, can you do that?
To the councillor, I will try and get it on screen. If you just bear with me 1 second.
I would say, while James is doing this, to non-majority group members, I took the opportunity of sharing this with the chair of the committee in the interests of collaboration, because I think this isn't a political issue. This is something which is of interest to 71,000 residents and their children and grandchildren. So I thought it was important to share thinking with all members of the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that.
And while James is doing this, the intention of the amendment is not to contradict the recommendations in any way in the report, but really to try to strengthen them and to show and to demonstrate to all those involved in this matter, including our officers, that the members of the council are 150% behind our efforts to move forward. So when you see the recommendations, when they arrive, it's a little bit embarrassing now, I'm doing a bit of infilling here. When they do arrive, they're intended to strengthen the hand of our officers. So I hope that's the intent. Are we making any progress?
Apologies, councillors, I'm having difficulty actually getting the file up, so just bear with me 1 second.
Would you like me to launch into?
If you could, councillor, I think it's the complication of the virtual desktop versus Zoom being not on the virtual desktop. So I'll have it shortly, but if you could pad it out a bit more, that'd be appreciated.
Would you like me to sing a short ditty?
Is it possible to read it out, James? Peter, could you read it out? What James is looking for?
Are you able to, James? Because there's a slight amendment to the original one, which might be helpful if you read it out, and you've also got a better voice than me.
I'll take your compliment, councillor. So I think your amendment is it to recommendation 1 to add, with the objective of progressively reducing the use of glyphosate-based products to 0 by January 2023. and to delete recommendations 2 and 3 and replace by inserting 2, undertake consultation with those UK and other authorities who no longer use glyphosate-based products in normal weed control activities to inform the Clean and Green review with a view to a revised specification being available for consideration for incorporation in the tender documentation for the 2022 weed control contract. Hammersmith and Fulham, Brighton, Vancouver, Brussels and the City of Luxembourg are examples of such authorities. And recommendation 3 would be replaced by when conditions permit, continue site-based trials in a variety of environments, including at least one town or village following consultation with the town and parish councils, with the current contractor, including the use of mechanical, foam and superheated steam-based methods within the current budgetary arrangements. 4, report the results of discussions with Derbyshire County Council, consultations with relevant authorities, and the results of trials to a future meeting of this committee before the 31st of July 2021, brackets COVID-19 circumstances permitting, close brackets. And 5, confirm the commitment of this council to eliminating the use of glyphosate in its weed control activities by the earliest date possible, or the earliest possible date rather, subject to the agreement of parish and town councils on mutually satisfactory methods of control.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you, James.
I won't extend the meeting by running through the detail of that, but I hope from what James was able to read out there, which we may now be getting on screen, you'll appreciate that each of those recommendations are there to strengthen support of the move towards non-glyphosate use and make it clear to those we're negotiating with, and particularly our residents and our officers, our 100% commitment to moving forward on this cause. I don't think I need to go on at any further length, Chair, but I look forward to support of members this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Purdy, are you in agreement with those changes?
Chair, well, it's Councillor Bryan. It's a pity we're not in America, because I could say, are you moving the 5th Amendment or the 7th Amendment? So you seem to like your amendments. And I want to make it very clear to some critics of our party, we do not oppose things just for the sake of it or on political lines. We evidence-based always in our group. I think this is a sensible amendment, and it's certainly not political. It is for the sake of our residents. And of course, we must appreciate that there isn't yet a product on the market that does not have some toxic effect. So I'm sure that technology will come along and help us out in this arena. I know the report from Munro Weed Control, who have the same problems as we do in trying to find a satisfactory product that will not be harmful but be effective. So I have no problem with the amendment, and I thank you for it, Councillor Bryan. I don't think it was confusing what was in the papers, quite frankly. I think your amendment helps fatten it out and give a date, so we support it.
Councillor Hobson, are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm happy. I'm totally happy with that. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Wayne, I think. Councillor Wayne?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to second this motion. I mean, I do feel that it's...
So you second the amendment?
Sorry, second the amendment, yes,
yeah.
And the amendment to the motion, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to hear that it is putting a little bit more context to it. The amended motion provides the council with the opportunity to continue with the current provider without penalty, whilst giving the opportunity to proactively assess other organisations and work practices for evidence of best practice. And it'll also allow time to assess alternative options to replace glyphosate, which I've had some, my father died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I'm not saying that it was down to that, but it's a horrible way to go. And there is evidence that links it to it. I'd personally like to see a structured assessment of the specific designated areas that are using the same work regimes to ensure an unbiased assessment. So we have to have the same work. If we do go down this line, we've got to have the same work on the same areas with the same time periods. And also recommendation 4 will allow the committee to be fully updated by 2021. I think, and I realise what Councillor Purdy's saying when he's saying about political sides and this, that and the other. There are certain things that are for the health and well-being of our community, and this is one. And I believe that if we as an organisation are to be taken seriously, we've got to show our commitment to our communities and our climate change pledge to be working towards a definitive cessation date for the use of glyphosate. And I believe that this motion, this amended motion, reinforces such a commitment. Thank you very much.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you for a well-considered and pragmatic amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, I have no other speakers, Jason, so do we now vote on the amended motion?
I've had my hand raised, Chair, again, not been noticed, obviously.
I don't know what's going wrong with the Councillor Councillor Burford. It's just not, you're just not appearing on here for some reason. Anyway, carry on, please.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, I'd like to ask a question. Obviously, I fully endorse Councillor O'Brien's amendment and also be supporting that. But I want to ask questions actually about weed killers, about herbicides, because obviously they're different types for different purposes. And obviously, if we're doing herbicide treatments on our playing fields because of the amount of pernicious perennial weeds, for instance, which are present, then obviously we're using selective weed killers. I don't know what if Ash or Samantha Grisman know what is used then and whether there's any danger with those chemicals that are used. And then, of course, obviously, glyphosate is systemic as opposed to residual. But back in many years ago, when I was doing this sort of work at the Peak National Park, specifying such products, residual weed killer was used in some instances, obviously to kill weeds in paved areas, for instance, where you needed to perhaps prevent regrowth. So, and obviously Munro weed control, our contractors, use herbicides. I think mainly, I don't know what else they do, but presumably they do spray road edges and curb edges and so on quite regularly. And obviously if they're using glyphosate, that's going to be reduced or eliminated. But what other herbicides have been tried in the past? What residual herbicides, for instance, which obviously act in the ground as opposed to within the root system of the weeds? So it's just a question, really. I'm not questioning what's being proposed, but there's detailed questions about different herbicides.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak before we go to the vote? No, I've got nobody else down. So, Jason, can
I have any answers?
Councillor Barefoot needs an answer.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Right,
I can take those questions, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Barefoot. I take your questions. I'll just make sure I've got them all. The initial question was regarding the herbicides on play areas. I joined in March of this year, February of this year, and we don't use any herbicides on our parks and play areas. So we don't use any. It's manual removal, pressure washing on the mats. It's mulching. We don't use any herbicides on play areas.
Can I just come back and say that what I'm talking about is playing fields, not football pitches and that sort of thing, not play areas as such. So obviously quite a wide area where pernicious weeds can obviously affect the playing surface, where you really want grass species and perhaps clover, but not pernicious weeds, broadleaf weeds.
Okay, our wider recs are subject to mostly brambles, which again can be dealt with without any sort of herbicide. So we don't tend to use that again because the parks, recs, play areas have designated static staff. We're able to put that extra labour in. It's the other areas that this report's considering for the change.
Okay with that, Councillor Barefoot? Yeah, Councillor Buckler.
Yes, my major concern is over the amount of weed killing which is undertaken, and it's actually less about how we kill weeds, but more about why, where, and when we kill weeds, which I think is probably the subject of the Clean and Green review. I am PA1, PA6 registered I do use glyphosate, and in some places I don't have a problem with using it. But the fact that it's used so extensively and so widely is, as far as I'm concerned, the real issue, and that's to do with why are we spraying a 2, 3, 4 inch wide strip of grass around all of our car parks, for example? Why are we killing those? Why are we killing those plants there? And which I think you'll probably say is to do with the Clean and Green Review. And that would have an impact on whether what my opinion was about when we should get rid of glyphosate, because I could cope with spot use of glyphosate for a longer period of time because of the way that it works. And there are issues with all of the things, but it's if we're going to be carrying on doing it to the extent that we do it, then I would, absolutely support getting rid of it as quickly as possible.
Sorry,
Is
Chair.
anybody else wish to speak? Sorry, you're answering that one.
Sorry, Chair. If I could just ask for clarity, Councillor Buckler, do you mean when you're saying about the spraying and the width of it, are you suggesting that or saying that it's a careless approach? Is that what you mean, or where we're using it?
Where we're using it, it's not a careless approach. The strips of grass which are killed next to the car parks are done very neatly, but it seems completely unnecessary.
Okay, thank you for that, Chair. The work that we undertake is on behalf of Derbyshire County Council, so they tell us where to spray and how to spray. So we're following essentially instruction on that. But again, it's something that we could talk to DCC about if that's a concern. Happy to do that as part of the discussions that are noted in the report. Just going back to Councillor Buckler's initial point on frequencies, yes, that certainly will form part of the Clean and Green Review, because I think we need to be looking at frequencies for all works that we undertake.
Thanks, Ash. Any other speakers before we go to the vote? No, can't see anybody else. Okay, Jason, can we vote please on the amended motion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just for clarity, because the mover and seconder of the original motion, that's the amendments, we're voting on the substantive motion, including those amendments. You could indicate whether you're for, against, or abstain. Councillor Buckler?
For.
Councillor Bull?
For.
Councillor Burfoot?
For.
Councillor Froggatt?
For.
Councillor Finesse?
For.
Councillor Gamble?
For.
Councillor Hobson?
For.
Councillor Hughes?
For.
Councillor Morley?
For.
Councillor O'Brien?
For.
Councillor Pawley?
For.
Councillor Purdy?
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe?
For.
Councillor Statham?
For.
Councillor Sutton?
For.
Councillor Wayne?
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. That concludes the meeting. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, viewers, for watching. Hope you found it interesting and useful. Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.